In August 2014, conflicts in the Golaghat district of Assam, bordering Nagaland, claimed 9 lives and left several injured. Inhabited by the Nagas and the Tea tribes, the borders that were drawn during the formation of Nagaland from Assam's Naga Hills in the year 1963 have seldom remained without dispute. The origin of the conflict goes back to 1826, when parts of the Naga Hills were annexed to Assam by the British following the Treaty of Yandabu. Ever since, hostilities between the contending communities on both sides have found violent expressions, laying bare ethnic fault lines. The wounds have only festered over time.
The whole issue of Assam-Nagaland relations is something about, in essence, it's about people-to-people relation, right? I mean, now we are so attuned to think in kind of cartographic sense that we think as per a map or as per territory. But of course, I mean, human beings have always lived in units, that's there. But if we see the history of a place which is as unique as our part of the land, that is Northeast India, we have seen that identities have been forever kind of, being forged, and forever it's been going through changes. And yet there are things which has been there since a long time. And in between those, the two things at one side that we have those fixed identities, and on one hand we have this kind of intermingling or this kind of merging. So in between the two, there are some very unique relations, unique kind of stories that we see.
Naga মানুহৰ ওপৰত মোৰ অকনো খুব নাই খঙো নাই কিন্তু তেওঁলোকৰ মোৰ যি চিন্তাধাৰা দুৰ্বল চিন্তাধাৰা আমি ভাবো সাধাৰণতে নগা মানুহবিলাক মৰমিয়াল কিন্তু লাহে লাহে দেখিছো যে তেওঁলোকে সেই মৰমিয়ালটোৰ পৰা আঁতৰি ফালৰি কাটি গৈছে তাৰমানে উগ্ৰতাৰ প্ৰভাৱ মানে তেওঁলোকক দেখিবলৈ পোৱা গৈছে যেনেকৈ আহি ৰাতি আহি বৰ্ডাৰ কিনাত মানুহ মাৰিবলৈ আৰম্ভ কৰিছে চুৰ কৰি গৈ
Nagaland became known to the outside world during World War II, when the Allied forces and the Japanese Imperial Army broke into a fierce battle at Kohima. The Nagas were caught in the crossfire and engaged in the war as scouts, porters, spies on both sides. To the Allies, it was known as the Burma Campaign, and to the Japanese, it was known as the infamous Operation Imphal.
This American missionaries given us Christian identity. British has given us Naga identity. The very fact that provisions of a special constitutional safeguard in the constitution is so clearly proof that we want to preserve, protect, and then promote our Naga identity. That is the only special clause inserted in the constitution for Nagas.
The topographical features of the Naga Hills ensured its many tribes existed in isolation, not just among themselves, but their hilltop settlements also remained largely inaccessible to the outside world. Etymology of the word Naga can be traced back to the Burmese word Naga, which means people with pierced ears. Home to over 16 major tribes, very little is known about the history of the Nagas. Before the arrival of the British, the Ahoms and the Dimasa Kacharis were the only known groups with whom the Nagas had maintained contact. Their fiercely autonomous nature was acknowledged by the British early on, who enacted special provisions to guard the Naga way of life from outside influence. However, proselytizing efforts were given due allowances over time, resulting in a society that is predominantly Christian today.
নগা আৰু অসমীয়াৰ মাজত এটা সময়ত ইয়াত একেবাৰে প্ৰভেদ নাছিল যিখিনি ইয়াৰ অৰিজিনেল অসমীয়া সেইটো কাৰণেই এতিয়াও কি হয় নগাবিলাকে বিশ্বাস কৰে যে অসমীয়া মানুহখিনি আমাৰ নিজৰ ভাই ককাইৰ দৰে মই এখন নগা গাঁৱলৈ গৈছিলোঁ নগা গাঁওখনৰ দুৱাৰমুখত এখন চাইনবোৰ্ড মাৰি থৈছে বৰ বঢ়িয়াকৈ লিখি থৈছে দেই পকা হেৰিয়াত বোৰ্ড এখন লিখি থৈছে নো আউটচাইডাৰ ইজ এলাউড এক্সেপ্ট আহোম
মই চাইছোঁ এইখন সমাজত নাগালেণ্ডত তেওঁলোক ইমান উদাৰ মানে তেওঁলোক ইমান মানে ছেকুলাৰ ধৰ্মনিৰপেক্ষ এই ধৰ্মনিৰপেক্ষতাটো এখেতসকলৰ মানে এটা মানে সাংঘাতিক বল তেওঁলোকে এইটো শ্ৰদ্ধাজনক কৰিব কোনো মানুহক জাতিগত ভিত্তি হিচাপে নাচায় এনেকুৱা যিবিলাক আমাৰ ৰাষ্ট্ৰীয় গঠনত যিবিলাক আমাৰ অৰিহণা হ'ব পাৰে সেইবিলাক আমাৰ নাই আৰু আমাৰ প্ৰচাৰ মাধ্যম মানে কোনো ভৱিষ্যত দৃষ্টিভংগী থকাকৈ কামবিলাক কৰা দেখা মই নাপাওঁ
The Naga Club was formed by prominent Naga leaders who had returned after serving the British in World War I. They submitted a memorandum to the Simon Commission in January 1929, demanding the exclusion of Naga Hills from the proposed reformed scheme of India, a document that defined the territory of the government of India. Subsequently, Nagaland was made an excluded area and the administration of Naga Hills was left to the government of Assam, on the terms that Nagaland should be free from economic exploitation.
When we see the map now, the geographical setting, Lota area, Ruka, Mogokchong, Aus, Longling, Phom, Hongya, Mon, they are on bordering area with Assam. So it was more or less of like interdependent to each other. The relationship between the hills and the plains. And I think it was more of Ahoms who knew the technique or who knew how to handle the hill people.
Okay.
Because for them, because the hill area was so strategic for them.
However, the Nagas were not satisfied with the arrangement and asserted their rights for self-determination. As expected, the Nagas refused to be part of Union of India on August 15, 1947, instead declaring their own independence a day ahead.
How many of Naga people residing in far-flung area know that there is a law, and if they know that they have a right under the Constitution, and if that right is violated, they can redress in the court of law. How many know that? Nobody knows. They suffer.
There's lack of
Lack of knowledge. Our people are exposed to the technical code, procedural law.
যিটো আমি স্ক্ৰিপ্ট বনাইছোঁ এইটো গৰা খহনীয়াৰ কাৰণে বনোৱা হৈছে বছৰে আমাৰ নদীখন ওচৰত আহি আছে খহি আছে গতিকে ৰাইজে মিলি এইটো স্ক্ৰিপ্টটো আমি অকণমান গৰা খহনীয়া বচাবলৈ কাৰণে বনাই আছোঁ ৰাইজে মিলিজুলি আৰু ইয়াত আমি এইটো বনাই পাৰি আকৌ জেং জাবৰ বান্ধি ফুট কাটিবলৈ কাৰণে পানী
Originating in Nagaland, the Doyang and Dhansiri rivers flow through a region which is surrounded by the Karbi Hills to the west, Naga Hills to the east, and Barail ranges to the southwest. In Assam, these two rivers pass through the Karbi Anglong Autonomous Council and Golaghat district to meet at a point before flowing into the Brahmaputra. Despite being a cradle to a rich cultural history, the contribution of Dhansiri today remains ironically absent from academic references. Assam, the land of mystery and black magic, as it were earlier known, is considered the gateway to the northeast. The first settlers of Assam were the Austro Asiatic people who were later absorbed by the Tibeto Burmese that arrived between 5th and 4th century BC, followed by the Indo-Aryans who arrived after them. However, it is only during the Burman dynasty that the documented and verifiable history of Assam or Kamrup, as the region is historically known, begins. The Kamrup kingdom during the most powerful time of its reign covered the entirety of Brahmaputra Valley, northern Bengal, Bhutan, and northern Bangladesh, and at times parts of present-day West Bengal and Bihar. The Dimasa Kachari kingdom was a bottom-up formation led by the chieftains of indigenous clans, who in their heydays had successfully consolidated their hold over a territory that ranged as far wide as Brahmaputra Valley in the north, crisscrossing the Doyang and Dhansiri up to the present-day Dimapur in Naga Hills on the south. By 13th century, the Kachari kingdom further extended its hold along the southern banks of Brahmaputra from Dikho to Kolong and beyond. In the absence of much written records, a large part of their history remains wrapped in oblivion. However, archaeological remains demonstrate an architectural superiority that clearly bespeaks of their civilizational prowess, suggestive of the first systematic instance of medieval state formation in the region.
তেতিয়া মই ইটোটো প্ৰমাণ দিব পাৰিম মই ডিমাৰাছা ৰজা আছিলে না নাই যদি ডিমাছা ৰজা থকাৰ বস্তুহে তো মই ইটো প্ৰুফ দেখাব পাৰিম ইটো কাৰণে ৰাখিছে
ইটো হৰুতে দেখিছো হা যেটো এই ওয়াল আছিল তাত হা ইটো ৰাজবাৰীৰ ওচৰত আৰু ওয়াল আছিল ইটো পুৰণি ৰাজাৰ ওয়াল আৰু ইটো খুব মেডিভেল এজ 16th century বা 17th century
The rise of the Ahoms and their expansionist pursuits soon posed threats to the Dimasa Kachari kingdom. In 1536 AD, Detsung, the Dimasa Kachari monarch, was defeated by the Ahoms, forcing him to recede the Kachari capital of Dimapur and move southward to Maibang, which became their new capital. By 1644, the Kachari hold over the Dhansiri Valley was completely wiped off. They retreated to the jungles in order to maintain a natural barrier between their kingdom and those of the Ahoms. In 1706, the Ahom king invaded Maibang and destroyed all its forts, pushing back the Dimasa Kacharis further south to take shelter in Khaspur, Silchar. With the eviction of the Dimasa Kacharis from the lands that they once ruled, human habitation disappeared from many of these areas. Their monuments lay unattended, consumed by the wilderness of impenetrable tropical jungles.
Doyang and Dhansiri Valley পিছত এখন হৈছিলগে আৰু সেইবিলাক হৈছিল সম্ভৱতঃ ভূমিকম্পৰ কাৰণে সেইকাৰণে এতিয়াও এইখিনি সেই এৰিয়াটোত কাছমাৰী ভিতৰ ফালে সেই এৰিয়াটোত ৰতনপুৰ বা সিফালে নাগালেণ্ডৰ ফুট হিলছত মাটিৰ পৰা প্ৰায় 8 পৰা 15 ফুট তলত ইটাৰ বেৰ পোৱা যায়
The Doyang and Dhansiri Valley has always been materially and naturally rich. Archaeological findings show that the valley was an important place in the ancient times. The intricate and sophisticated nature of the archaeological artifacts indicate that the region was organized since ancient times. Over many centuries of settlement, trade, and commerce, the region has layers upon layers of diverse physical and cultural elements. There is enough physical evidence to indicate that the region was a center of cultural and religious exchange. Today, these sites are considered unimportant, and there is an absence of interest. Government intervention is very limited because of the fact that there are more important issues to look after. Historical and archaeological sites in this region, therefore, lie in a desolate condition.
When you try to prove something, even archaeology in Ayodhya, for instance, is done for a particular purpose. So there's a politics connected to archaeology as such. Right. So unless and until some pressure group kind of makes it's all possibility that things would go into oblivion and nobody takes care and forgotten. I mean, in the sense that these disciplines are not neutral. They are very, very politically bound.
Yeah.
They serve a certain contemporary purpose. History is actually kind of discovered, written for contemporary purpose. Right. So unless a motivation comes from a kind of local political forces, how such monuments, such archaeological sites can be recovered is an issue.
By 1830s, arrival of the British resulted in the annexation of the last remaining Dimasa Kachari bastion of Khaspur. In the present times, confined between the Brahmaputra and Barak Valley, the Dimasa district, home to the Dimasa Kachari population, continues to face the onslaught of demographic invasion, which has reduced their presence in the region to a minority with perpetual fear of being assimilated by other numerically stronger groups.
আমাৰ নৰ্থ ইষ্টত যিমান ট্ৰাইবেল আছে নিজৰ কৃষ্টি সংস্কৃতি বজাই ৰাখিবৰ কাৰণে এইটো মানে সুৰক্ষা ৰাখিবৰ কাৰণে আজি কি কৰে চবে নিজৰ নিজৰ এটা ডিটাৰমিনেশ্যন যিটো মানে আমি কি কৰিম নকৰিম এইটো আমি নিজে নিজে সাব্যস্ত কৰিবৰ কাৰণে এটা পাৱাৰ বিচাৰে পলিটিকেল পাৱাৰ বিচাৰে ধৰি লওক আপোনাৰ নাগালেণ্ড কওক মিজোৰাম কওক মেঘালয় কওক মেইন আচল বস্তুটো ভিত্তিটো সেইটোৱে আছিলে যে আমি নিজৰ কৃষ্টি সংস্কৃতি আমি নিজে সুৰক্ষা কৰিম আমাৰ সেইটো পাৱাৰ ভিত্তি হ'ল ধৰি লওক আমি এতিয়া অসমৰ লগত আছোঁ বেয়া একো নহয় তথাপিও আমি যদি নিজে যদি আমাৰ এটা সায়ত্ব কিবা এটা শাসনৰ যদি ব্যৱস্থা পাম নিজৰ যিকোনো বস্তু আমি নিজৰ কৃষ্টি সংস্কৃতি বা অন্যান্য শিক্ষা এইবিলাক যদি আমি নিজৰ হিচাপত আগবঢ়াই ল'বলৈ হ'লে আমাৰ এতিয়া পলিটিকেল পাৱাৰো লাগিব সেইটোৱে বিশেষ কাৰণ
তাৰমানে আপুনি এইটো ভাবে নেকি যে পলিটিকেল পাৱাৰ ধৰি লওক ডিমাচাসকলৰ সিমানখিনি নাই সেইটো আপুনি অনুভৱ কৰে
কৰি আছোঁ চবেই কৰিছে
সেইটো সকলোৱে কৰিছে
তাৰ কাৰণে আমি কিমান দিনৰ পৰা আমাৰ এটা ধৰি লওক সুকীয়া ৰাজ্য এটা আমি বিচাৰিছোঁ
As with the rest of the nation, the movement for independence in Assam became a basis for different tribes, religious groups, and communities to forge a common alliance against the formidable presence of British imperialism. But soon after independence, the social and political unity steadily fell apart in the following decades. This was partly triggered by the short-sightedness to reformulate a greater Assamese identity at the cost of disregard for linguistic and ethnic differences. Language became the primary site of contestation of identity differences and acted as a precursor for politics based on ethno-nationalism in the post-colonial Assam. These developments led to a paradox of sorts, where the new tribal elites soon began to challenge the hegemony of Assamese mainstream, doing so within the larger socio-historical constraints, where Assamese continues to enjoy its status of lingua franca.
Hey